Like It Hot, to The Boston Strangler, to the all-time classic Spartacus. He was married to Janet Leigh and is the father of Jamie Lee Curtis. He paints, writes, acts, and still has time to tell a great story, especially if it's about classic Hollywood. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on Interviews, our conversation with Oscar-nominated actor Mr. Tony Curtis. So how did a New York boy like you end up a Hollywood legend?
Yeah, how about that? You used to have to be English and out of the royal family to end up with a good job.
It wasn't what you had set out to do in life, or was it?
Oh, it was. When I was a kid, growing up in New York, from the time I was 5 years old, when I was allowed to go to the movies. I don't even know how I got to the movies. Whether my parents took me, I certainly didn't get in there on my own, or maybe I did. But when I saw those images on the screen, it was an astounding experience.
Yeah.
Something that provoked me and made me yearn, if that's the word. It was hard to express it as a kid. You just found yourself suckered into some kind of feeling. That unique feeling of finding something that no one else had.
Is it true that the reason you went into the Navy was because of what you had seen on the screen?
Absolutely. I feel I'm going to be 80 years old in June. That 75 years of my life was training to be here sitting with you. That movies were part of it, growing up was part of it. I found that once I saw the movies, I knew it was a profession that I wanted to do. Examine it. I examine it. Into perpetuity. You're making something which will show forever. Forever. There's something intangible about it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Wherever it'll be, 100 years from now, maybe they'll be showing some of these movies. And it just goes on and on and on. And I like the idea that every year of my life, I had an opportunity to be somebody else, to improve myself.
Do you ever forget who that boy was that started out?
Oh, no, I don't. He's part of the images that I saw. When I sit here and think of myself as a kid, it's like thinking of Cary Grant in one of my movies. I was there, and I vaguely remember it. And that's important, that's part of my life. I don't think of my profession as an acting experience. It's a being experience. It scoops you up in its environment.
Yeah.
You know, here we sit in this opulent and beautiful home with lights surrounding us. We're knowledgeable in terms of what the cameras are doing. And we are swept in its magic. You know? We're at our best behavior. We are what we are. Were I in a movie where I played the Boston Strangler, another attitude would take its place. I like to hypnotize myself, put myself in another environment. So if I dressed like that character, I become that person.
Did you always have that understanding of acting? Was it always the same
Always,
approach?
always.
Or as you acted, did you learn?
Always. Yeah. Always. I don't believe in acting schools. I don't believe acting schools help. All these the actor studio that, well, with Marlon Brando, it was a natural experience. It was very impetuous. But all the other actors now play that character. Yeah. And I don't like that. So I just don't bother acting. I learn the lines, get to know what the environment is I'm in, and all of a sudden it surrounds me. There's no way out. There's no way out.
Do you keep, if there were multiple takes of a scene, would it be the same performance from you each time, or is each
Please
time?
say again.
If there's multiple takes in a scene, would each take from your performance be the same each time, or
Perhaps,
is every time unique?
but that's where I improve myself in the takes. I'll do one take and realize maybe I should have put the emphasis on, or maybe I should have looked away. Maybe I should have said the line not looking at the person and then turn around and give you my intent. Or maybe I should never have done that at all, just look forward. So any way I do it becomes the way it should be, you know?
Right.
And if I do it properly, all those tiny little pieces fit together, and that character is a continuous one. Even if he's a madman, even if he's erratic, even if he's nuts, putting together, you put it in such a way that you give the impression of being nutty, you know?
Right.
You can't be nuts. These little pieces make you look like you're nuts. Like you, Ernie. You are nuts.
You can tell that already.
Going in.
Well, I'm going to take you back for a moment. Is it true you were in a street gang when you were 11
I
years
was.
old? When we think of that, same thing as when we think of street gangs today, or was it a different?
Well, it wasn't. I don't remember anybody killing anybody. I remember stealing Coke bottles, going to 5 and 10 cent store, grabbing little soldiers and stuff and sticking them in our blouse. There was never a major crime. Not that that makes it less, but and those kind of things were provoked by how hungry I was. You know, I was always hungry. We did at home. I got enough food, but never enough that I wanted. So hot dogs and pretzels and donuts were all accessories, and it was difficult to steal them because they were behind glass.
Right.
So if I stole something and was able to turn it into money to buy that, that's the way it was.
Do you think that gave you the drive to be successful in your career?
No. My success, if you will, came with each step, each part I played. As I was a kid, I used to walk down the street as an Italian. I was in an Italian neighborhood. Hey, Goomba. I assumed that thing, that attitude. Whatever neighborhood I was in, if I knew beforehand what it was, so I wouldn't get picked on. I was a handsome kid as a boy, and I used to be beat up for it. And I was Jewish, so I was that kike who was a faggot. All of those things bombarded me when I was a boy, really bombarded me. And I was smart enough to realize that the only way to get out of that kind of, I didn't want my face busted up. I didn't want to come home bleeding as everybody. It was an epidemic. Mm-hmm. But I was an excellent athlete, and I was able to finagle my way out of it, either by speed running or by an attitude, or by getting so angry that they would lay back. So I always had to use that same Gedarum feeling I'm having now with you then.
Yeah.
You know? So when I walked out in the street, I didn't just go skipping around like a hairdresser. You know, it took a lot of doing. It took for me to say, be careful, which street are we going now? Where are you going? How are you going to go? Better time at this. So I was always very analytical about that, and I think that's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I don't look for trouble. I never did.
So you were almost acting to protect yourself in a way.
Absolutely, even at home.
Yeah.
If I didn't want my mother to catch me with whatever it was, I came up with some subtle performance that fit in what my performance was usually, so you couldn't catch me doing it.
Yeah. When you watch your films back, when you see them, when you come across one on TV, maybe not expecting it, can you sit and watch the film for the film's sake, or do they become little memories for you?
I like looking at me. I always did.
Yeah.
You know? And in the movies, I always found parts that I could extend myself in it. So that was a unique pleasure for me, you know?
Yeah.
And I like to see what I did, how I behaved. what I did. That was a school for me for my next movie. That behavior was a school for me when I was a kid in the streets. I would behave in such a way and get out of trouble. I say, well, that was a good performance. Yeah, I like the way I faked that guy out from putting down that bat before he hit me with it. Oh, so you see, that experiences I had as a kid were like the experiences in movies. I made about 140 movies now.
Right. When you think back on the films, are there some that stand out as just that you knew were classics at the time they were being made, or do some of them just sneak up and catch you?
I didn't. I never was able to give it any more substance than the substance of making them at the time.
Yeah.
And there was no way. Oh, there were some films you knew they were, but I never thought of them, Ernie, as great works of art or not great works of art. It's just a movie. That's all it was in those days. Just a movie.
Right.
You know?
Was the studio system good for you or bad for you, do you think?
Oh, excellent for me. They kept putting me to work, you see. When I first got into movies, I was 23 years old. I made 3 pictures a year for 3 or 4 years. That's 6, 8, 9 movies in, in a year or so, a little more. And that gave me a lot of practice, how to walk and sit down in a mark, to be within the distance of the camera, knowing where the lights are, being aware of everything around me, you know? And all of a sudden, sitting here, all of this is extemporaneous. It's got nothing, it just leads up to where you and I are.
So how do you, in that moment of acting, forget about all the rest that's going around, all the people in the room, all of the equipment, to get into the character to truly present it?
I do that out of my intent and by hypnotizing myself, by fixing my ego, my attitude, that sense of who I am, down to one solid piece of goods. And there I am talking to you. And bullshit. I don't have to be tough and hard and give you pontifical expressions. You know, forget it. It's got nothing to do with it. What's got to do with it is what it is you're doing. If we're doing a comedy, we'd find things that would be funny, you know? We'd find things to do, but we're not, because we're caught in this space. So my space is important. Remember, before we first started, I asked if, what size the camera, where it was, and I got it right on. I have a sense where that camera is cutting here. So within that area, I know that if my fly is open, it makes no difference.
It would to me, and so I'm very happy everything's in place.
Yeah, right. I like expressing myself to you, Ernie. The improbability of this profession. It's an extraordinary profession.
Yeah.
It's an expression without words, an expression without thought, expressions without feeling. Yet you bring all of those things to what you're doing. It's invisible, you know? Yeah. It's hypnotic.
Was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
No, I like the acting part of it, what I call the acting part of it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. I did a film with Larry Olivier called Spartacus.
I've heard of that one.
And we used to talk about acting. I used to listen to what he had to say. He knew a lot about it. And I asked him how he prepared himself for a part. And he said to me, you know the expression, clothes make the man? I said, yeah. He said, well, then I dress myself the way I think that character would be. I put on clothes that I feel will exemplify, yes or no, who that character is. I use makeup and hair and all of that stuff to give me, and once I'm in it and I look in the mirror, I'm there. All I have to do is stay out of its way, stay out of the mirror's version of me. Because if I played against what my clothes were and what I looked like, it would ruin the performance.
Having worked in the career you've worked in that and all the people you've met, it must have been amazing, the stories you heard, the things you learned. Looking back on it, it just must be phenomenal.
really.
I do have to ask you, though, a bit about some of the women folk that have passed through your life.
Yes.
True or false, you did date Marilyn Monroe?
Oh, I did more to Marilyn Monroe than date her.
This was back before both your careers had
This
taken
was about
off?
1949 and 50. I was 24, Marilyn was 21.
Yeah.
I met her right at the beginning of her career. I was already on the contract to Universal, and we spent about 7-8 months together. And then we separated. She was trying to get a career started. I was already started. And you know, when you're career bound, when you dedicate yourself, nothing can stand in your way. Certainly not your mother, your boyfriend or girlfriend, nothing can stand in your way, you know?
Yeah.
You can't. If you were married, it'd be very tough to do it.
Do you think you missed things in life by
Say
following
again?
the career? Do you think you missed things in your life by following your career?
I think so. What I've missed, Ernie, is an education. When I was a kid, I barely went to school. I didn't finish elementary school, and then I was on my way to going to high school, and I just fiddled around to get through it all. And I hardly ever went to high school. I just ran around in the streets, you know, playing baseball or something, traveling to Central Park, going to museums, you know. There was nothing more I could do. I would deliver clothes for my father in his tailor store and get jobs around the neighborhood. But I had nothing interested me. Mm-hmm. You know, I had this eye on the sparrow, which are movies, and I didn't want to, any profession that was going to distract me from it. I should have had an education. I was a smart kid.
Yeah.
And I wish I did. I would have loved to know mathematics, languages, engineering, get a really solid base for myself, and then from there, step out. You didn't have to make any decision then, but just get an introduction. I was ignorant. I didn't know about these unique and interesting facets there are to the living experience there, or to what you could experience, you know?
Right.
So I didn't give myself that opportunity. And when the war came, I got in the Navy, and as soon as the war was over, I got in the movies. I didn't have to kiss anybody, kiss anything. I just got in the movie. So I was ordained, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps I was lucky.
How did you meet Janet Leigh?
I saw her at a party, at a cocktail party. When you were under contract to a studio, you were allowed the privilege to go to these cocktail parties all over town. Every studio always had a little soiree going on, showing their pictures, and all their contract players were invited. So as a contract player, I was one of the elite of the acting profession, just by the simple fact that I was getting paid a salary.
Right.
If you were getting paid a salary, you were an actor. You were in the business, you know. So I used to mosey around all these things, and I saw her at a party. She was so beautiful, and I didn't have a chance. She was going with 2 or 3 guys. Howard Hughes was sneaking around with her. But I persevered.
And you won her.
I didn't let anybody stand in my way.
Yeah. Was it hard to be married with all the attention? For that time, you
was.
guys were America's sweethearts.
It was. But I was determined. I still can't understand why I wanted to get married so early. You know? Mm-hmm. But I needed the affection and the relationship of a woman. I didn't realize how much I needed it until I got in the movies. And then that intensified with my need to be in the movies. You know, I wasn't completely untethered. It wasn't possible for me to just, I needed the affections of a woman, whatever the word affection conjures up in your brain, that was it.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted them to be as beautiful as I wanted them to be. And so I sought them out. And being a good-looking kid, I had a lot of fun.
Well, you knew you were good looking. You couldn't have not known it.
Yes.
Did that affect the way you approached things that you did? I mean, there was a point.
No, I knew I was a handsome boy, a handsome guy. But I knew it would also get me in trouble if I didn't pay attention to it. Because if I didn't pay attention to it, I would be emphasizing it. Mm-hmm. So I had to play against it. Okay?
Right.
I didn't say I played the dummy, but I avoided any contact where my looks would have any effect on the relationship. A lot of guys didn't like me. A lot of women didn't like me.
Right.
It's incredible what it was. You're a nice-looking guy. You must understand what I'm talking about. I look at that beautiful girl you're working with. Imagine what she's had to go through.
Well, I mean, you were getting 6,000 letters a week for a clipping of your hair.
And I loved it. I love it now.
Yeah.
These old women come up to me just almost quivering and almost crying. And I said, I know, we grew up together. They say, yes, yes, yes. And they were little girls. They was 12, 13, 11, 10 when I started in the movies. You know, and there they are, 60 and 70-year-old women who never forgot their yearnings of their youth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And for me, that's one of the greatest gifts this profession has given me. Anywhere I go in the world, there are these people that have seen me since I'm a boy. Isn't that remarkable for a guy, for anybody? How do you get that? How do you develop that? How do you figure that out early? You can't.
Yeah.
You just do it and it accumulates. I'm so glad I'm alive and that it didn't kill me, because it could have killed you. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of guys and girls that it killed. I mean, literally killed. Right. They couldn't take the attention so much.
Tell me a little bit about your relationship with Burt Lancaster.
Burt was one of the finest men I ever knew. I met these extraordinarily intelligent men and women in my profession. Burt Lancaster, articulate, very liberal, kind, considerate, and tough. His combination was extraordinary and funny. He had a flair and handsome man, tall, well-built, you know, and I enjoyed watching him operate and work, you know. Everybody was, I won't say intimidated by him, but everybody was just in awe of him, you know?
Yeah.
And he was so generous and kind. I did really 2 outstanding movies with him, right. Trapeze and Sweet Smell of Success. Yeah. They all were. The only one that was a little nervous was Kirk Douglas.
Really?
Yeah, he was just nervous.
Yeah.
You know.
How about Jack Lemmon?
The best.
Yeah.
All these guys, Cary Grant, Gregory Peck. God, that was all the guys I worked with.
Yeah.
All of them. Yul Brynner. Well, he was a little dicey.
Yeah.
Yul was a little nervous. But all these other guys were, and these women I worked with, what made them so nice was that they were feeling the same pressure I was. There's a pressure. There's a $250,000 a movie pressure. Today it's $20 million a movie pressure.
Yeah. So tell me how you got into the painting, before we run out of time.
Say again?
The artwork. How did you get into that?
I've been painting all my life, as a kid.
Yeah.
I was always drawing. And I found I had a little gift for it. I just enjoyed it so much. So I continued to do it. I didn't have to worry about when I did it. I'd have a book with me in school that a sketchbook, and while everybody was doing arithmetic, I was making sketches or drawings and training my hand to be able to do it. It's a training experience. It's a learning experience. And after a while, you make enough mistakes, if you will. You begin to be able to have your hand, the pencil, do things. It gets a life of its own. It kind of tempts you to do something a little bit more. And before you know it, you are in control of it, and it controls you.
If you had to give up one or the other, acting or painting, which would you give up?
It would be hard for me to decide, you know?
Yeah.
Painting is such an insular experience. You don't have to bother with anybody. There's nobody around that disturbs you or tells you. Mm-hmm. Acting is a cooperative experience. So they're both very different. And and both you have to be successful in both to make a decision about it. You know, because you could do one or the other without interfering with each other. They're both separate but equal in terms of yourself.
Last question. Retirement? Is that even a word you ever say?
No, I don't know what that means. You know, as long as I can stand up and move, I do it.
Yeah.
If I couldn't get up and do it, I'd do it sitting down. There's so much that one can enjoy without having to worry about professions, you know?
Well, we have so enjoyed getting the opportunity to talk with you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Truly an honor.
Is our 26 minutes up?
We're done. Thank you very much.
Give me 5. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Tony Curtis.